Porto Alegre, capital of Rio Grande do Sul, is Brazil's second most important inland port. Its 1.3 million citizens come from a wide variety of backgrounds. With the fastest growing economy in Brazil, the state of Rio Grande do Sul attracts immigrants from many other poorer regions of the country who come in search of work and a better future. Rio Grandenses are famous for their entrepreneurial skills. They're known as gauchos because, at least initially, the basis of their wealth was cattle ranching. Gaucho traditions, from accordion music and baggy pants to drinking mate, are proudly maintained. Rio Grande do Sul has a history of fierce independence, including a breakaway movement to form a separate nation. The region was settled by waves of German and Italian immigrants, including in the 20th century many anarchists, sowing the seeds of community activism. In Porto Alegre, even the homeless have their own pressure group. So perhaps it's not surprising that Porto Alegre is also the birthplace of an extraordinary experiment in direct democracy. It's known as Participatory Budgeting. It's been copied in various forms in almost 100 other Brazilian cities today. Tarso Genro is Porto Alegre's mayor. It's his second term of office since 1989, when a popular front of progressive parties won the municipal elections and introduced the Participatory Budgeting scheme. Over the last 13 years, the scheme has been continuously added to and improved.
The
first thing population votes on is the internal budget, the salaries and the running costs of the town hall machine. Of course, voting on salaries and running costs is really more or less a formality, because they are fixed by law. Where the arguments begin is over the money set aside for investment, about 15 to 20% of our budget, depending on the year, to be used for new works and special services linked to them. Competition for this money is fierce within the community, because we receive about 1,300 demands each year and can only satisfy between 300 and 350 of them.
This is the story of three of the people who became involved in the Porto Alegre experiment. Their lives and neighborhoods have been profoundly changed by the experience. Rolf Naumann often speaks German at home with his wife and ecologist daughter. Now retired, he devotes much of his energy to worrying about the city's transport system. Angelica Marinha is a single mother who fought to improve conditions in her shantytown. She's moved through the ranks of the budget process, from local delegate to her present job as political organizer. Marli Medeiros was born in poverty and brought up 4 daughters and an adopted son mainly on her own. Marli is the driving force behind the Environmental Education or Rubbish Recycling Centre and has become the uncrowned queen of Vila Pinto. This is Vila Pinto, one of Porto Alegre's poorest neighborhoods, and until recently, one of its most violent. In 1994, its main economy was drug dealing. Nobody dared go out after 7 p.m. 51 rapes were reported that year. 6 years later, a dramatic change had taken place. There were no recorded rapes in the year 2000, and things were a great deal more peaceful. This was mainly thanks to a thriving rubbish recycling centre, which offers a genuine economic alternative to the people of Vila Pinto. Over 2/3 of the workforce is female.
A grande Mato Sampaio, né,
Vila Pinto has 23,000 inhabitants, and according to the statistics, it was Latin America's second worst slum area. When I discovered this, I decided to take a closer look. I felt I had a duty to change the situation. I felt ashamed of living in a community which was known the world over as a slum. The misery was due to the fact that this neighborhood was controlled by drug dealers, and as far as they are concerned, the worse things are, the harder it is to get access, the better it is for them. We had no proper roads, so even the police couldn't get in.
The rubbish recycling centre has grown from strength to strength. Each week's work begins with a communal prayer to ask for help with problems and to give thanks for all the good things that have begun to happen. On the other side of town, in a very middle-class neighbourhood, Rolf passes by his old business premises, where he still keeps an office.
Começou porque tivemos no bairro onde eu moro.
I got involved because we had an environmental problem in our neighborhood.
Nós tínhamos na vizinhança.
There were several restaurants known as cafés in the vicinity, which were open till the small hours of the morning.
Até altas horas da madrugada.
They were very noisy, very loud, with a lot of very excited young people.
Jovem, muito agitado. Então, a população...
So the residents decided to get together and do something about it. And we were advised that the best way to get the council to act was through the participatory budget process.
A administração tome alguma providência via...
And that's when I discovered that this existed. And the people were interested. There was real solidarity. And so I got enthusiastic and began to take part.
Empolguei, gostei e passei a participar.
There are pockets of poverty all over Porto Alegre, sometimes in quite wealthy areas like Angelica's. But the budgeting process has a policy of rebuilding slums right where they are, rather than exiling poor residents to the outskirts of town.
A minha casa e as casas da Vila Renascença,
Yes, my own house and the others in Vila Renascença were all part of that policy and that struggle, because this is essential, a smart neighborhood. So it was very much coveted by the property developers. They would have liked to use this land for big developments, which would give them big profits. Property speculations rife in a city like Porto Alegre, but we wonder why to go on living in this smart neighborhood. Because we are citizens too. We began with our own individual demands, a house of our own in our own neighborhood. But this process needed to become a collective one, to make us stronger to defend our case. So joining up with other poor neighborhoods was very important to create a strong group and to learn all about town planning regulations, discuss things, design a good project and move ahead with our struggle. Because of all the experience I got, first as a community delegate, then a councillor, learning to stand up for my demands, my neighborhood, my district, I came to understand what working as a community coordinator means. Taking part in the participatory budgeting system as a district coordinator is a gratifying job because of the results you get. But it depends a lot on your dedication and your efforts to get other people to fight for the things which you have already won and that you know can be won by them too.
While Angelica was helping people fight for slum clearance projects, Marley needed to find a way of empowering women and ending the cycle of violence against them.
As mulheres eram muito usadas pelo tráfico, né?
The drug dealers used and abused their women. When the police made a raid, the women had to hide the drugs in their bags so that when the men were searched, they had nothing on them. And the women and children were at their beck and call. And if they didn't want to get involved, they were beaten up. They had no choice but to do what the men told them. Of course, this was not the case for the majority, but a lot of women had to carry out this task. They were at the men's mercy, and the men felt that, since they were supporting them financially, they owned them. So they handed out food and also the odd beating. A local government known as popular democracy was in power, and a revolutionary process called participatory budgeting had been introduced. You could put forward your demands and discuss them with people from all over. When I went to see the mayor and told him I wanted to set up a project here, he set me a challenge. He told me he doubted I could get people to change from drug dealing to rubbish recycling. But he said that if I could attract more supporters from my project, he would study it carefully. Right away, I set up a project capable of bringing in the same level of returns as drug dealing.
For many years, the priority was for basic sanitation. In other years, the priority was paving roads or housing. It all depends on what the most pressing social problems are in a particular year, and also on the group of people who have attended the popular assemblies. What they want determines future investments.
Once a year, neighbours from the 16 city districts get a chance to lobby for their own local projects.
The budget scheme divides the city into 16 districts, and each district has 4 community councillors and 4 delegates. The delegates are elected at 2 big annual assemblies, the first and the second round. In the first round assemblies, 1 community delegate is elected for every 10 people who turn up. He or she has to take part in weekly district meetings to establish what the local demands are. And the delegate gets to understand the process better, both by taking part in the local meetings and also in the seminars held for delegates and councillors.
Debates can get very heated. Anyone can have 3 minutes to put their case. People quickly realize this helps them have a real say in improving their own lives. But where does it leave the elected city councillors?
The city council loses none of its prerogatives. It continues with all its usual quota of responsibilities. And in the final analysis, it is the city council which decides on the municipal budget. But don't forget, it takes this decision in the full knowledge of what the community wants. And if it goes against them, it will be punished, and councillors won't get re-elected.
It's a system, probably the most efficient one, which enables citizens to take part in the life of their city, a way in which they can influence things, and even, in the case of this participatory budget system, decide about investments, decide what happens to the money which, in the final analysis, we are all paying.
As well as providing a livelihood for 230 residents of Vila Pinto, the recycling centre is attracting funding for other community projects.
The income from drug dealing is immediate. You hand the stuff over, they give you cash in return. But rubbish also brings in a totally guaranteed return. Today, it's the raw material with the surest economic return of all. There's an endless supply of it. It's a serious environmental problem which can always be converted into income by this kind of community. And you don't need any complex technology to separate it and recycle it. You've got to do a lot of work with your people. People used to say to me, Marli, what are you up to? Sorting rubbish or having meetings? So I would say, if you want to make a good job of recycling rubbish, you've got to recycle the human beings first.
In addition to the Council of Neighbourhood Representatives, the budgeting scheme introduced special plenaries. Their role? To debate and monitor projects that affected not just one individual neighbourhood, but the whole city.
Yes, I got involved 6 years ago, and I was elected the community delegate about the time when the Ring Road project came up. This was the city's most important transport project, as well as being the largest and the most costly. And the Ring Road passes exactly 50 meters from my home. The Ring Road goes from the airport to the southern part of town. If I'm not mistaken, a length of 13 kilometers. It is 60 meters wide, with one very important characteristic. It has a bus lane. Porto Alegre decided that the best way to solve the transport problem and to decongest traffic was to improve public transport services.
The Ring Road project is well underway. City projects like this are now supervised by community delegates. They also vet all Porto Alegre's income and expenditure figures. This makes corruption and kickbacks almost impossible. As civil engineering contracts are a magnet for corruption the world over, this is a major breakthrough.
Every project designated as a priority in a specific forum, in this case the Special Issue Committee on Transport, is followed by a Works Commission. According to the budget and system rules, the Works Commission meets to study the plans before the work itself can begin. It then oversees the work from the day the contract is signed right through to the end.
This neighbourhood has fought for 4 years to get funds for a major road widening scheme. So, despite the downpour, when the mayor finally comes to sign the works contract, he receives an enthusiastic welcome. Local priorities, though, don't always coincide with the town hall's plans, as Mayor Tarso is quick to concede.
During our first year in government, we, the town halls, defended the idea of making public transport an investment priority. But we received a dousing. We lost completely because the community decided that way in front of transport came community road paving and sanitation. We thought that people were much more worried about public transport, but they weren't, despite the crisis in public transport which we inherited from previous governments. So the town hall argues the point and makes proposals for other works. But if these are defeated, then the work simply isn't commissioned.
A prefeitura não faz aquelas obras.
Vila que não percebe a necessidade de luta, né, da conquista dos seus
If a shanty town fails to realize that it has to fight to improve things, then poor conditions like these will remain.
Mínimas de vida, de
Housing, health, employment and social problems don't improve.
Falta das políticas sociais, mas é porque as pessoas também
Often it's because people are disheartened because of all the false hopes and broken promises from the populist and paternalistic politicians of the old days.
Feitas e não são cumpridas, e toda uma tradição cultural do paternalismo, do populismo. Mas acredito que agora, com uma nova
But I think that now this area has got its residents' association going again, with a new president, a woman, who has clear ideas about residents' rights. I think they can put up a good fight to win funding to rebuild their homes and have a better life ahead of them.
Batalha para conquistarem a sua obra, das suas casas e ter uma vida melhor.
The recycling center has only achieved this degree of success because Porto Alegre has selective rubbish collection. If this selective rubbish collection didn't exist, we would be back to sorting through the rubbish dump like in the old days, and that's where real violence against the human spirit begins. So today, when people ask me, what's the first thing you need in a city to be able to set up a place like the recycling center? The first thing is selective rubbish collection.
Em primeiro lugar, a coleta seletiva. I
believe that the whole world has to realize that if we don't look after the rubbish, if we don't give it the proper treatment, we are going to continue to contaminate our planet. Selective rubbish collection is absolutely essential.
Our fight is directed against the negative effects of the economic system, social exclusion, violence, unemployment, and extreme poverty. We are fighting the effects, but we don't have the powers to attack the causes. It isn't up to us to decide on the interest rates or the way federal taxes are raised. It isn't up to us to decide on the economic model, which now favors financial speculators instead of encouraging investment in production to generate jobs and social integration. It isn't up to us to decide on major public works, which generate economic activity, wealth and infrastructure and help the country develop. This is all beyond our control. What we control is the fight against the effects, but we need to take this fight seriously. We need to turn it into a fight for a different kind of country, with a different form of income distribution. In the final analysis, a society where the outstanding characteristics are solidarity and equality, instead of social exclusion and exploitation.
a exclusão e exploração. Porque Porto Alegre...
Porto Alegre has become a reference point, not because it solved all its social problems, although we'll continue to fight to resolve them. It's become a reference point for its capacity to resist. And this capacity to resist is down to you.
Está nas costas de vocês. É vocês que criaram essa capacidade.
You are the ones who've created this capacity for resistance. You're running the participatory budget. You've built up a critical community which is permanently in action, calling the government to account and even deciding on policies.
Recife in northeastern Brazil, a city of contrasts. Next to buildings from the mid-19th century, glass and marble towers of the globalized world rise up the Brazilian megalopolis with its luxury hotels, endless beaches, and tropical climate is popular with holidaymakers. However, more than half of the population lives far from the paradisiacal beaches, in slums, where citizens' lives are characterized by poverty and inadequate facilities. To counteract these problems, the city launched a process in 2001 which offers citizens comprehensive opportunities of participating in decision-making. In earlier times, before I participated in legislation, the government made all decisions about matters in the city on its own, and they decided according to their own will and their own political convictions. But not anymore. Neither the municipal council nor the mayor make the decisions as to where the city's financial resources are spent. This is decided by the citizens, and we, as their representatives, support them, seek to enter into dialogue with them, and join forces with the citizens in order to design the city of the future side by side. Every year, municipal authorities set up a participatory budget where citizens can bring in their own suggestions, particularly for urban development measures in their region. A comprehensive network of helpers informs the residents accordingly. In meetings in all regions of the city, the citizens can then choose 10 of the suggested projects for their micro-region. In plenary forums on special topics, they can also decide which measures should be implemented in the 15 political areas, such as education, youth, senior citizens, and culture. In contrast to the regional forums, programs for the entire city are developed here. Both in the regional and plenary forums, the participants subsequently elect delegates who accompany the further process and dispatch members to a budget advisory council. This council drafts a budget on the basis of the selected projects, which is then passed by the municipal council. So that the citizens can also be involved in the implementation of the projects, a commission is set up for every measure. This was also done in the district of Iraqi, where a sewer of more than 900 meters in length is planned to prevent flooding.
For many years, we have suffered from the fact that our neighborhood has no sewage system and no drains. Our situation will improve significantly when the sewer is finished.
In addition to this, even school children are allowed to join in the decision-making in Recife. In the children's participatory budget, they develop project areas for their school and the city. Here, too, delegates are elected who represent the children in the further process. Kayla, in the 7th grade, is one of them.
We want our school to have new computers and the playground to be improved through plants and a vegetable garden.
Through the participatory budget, not just everyday life at school, but also the living conditions of many residents have clearly improved.
The participatory budget leads to improvements every year for us in the favela, and I believe there is still greater potential here.
Since the introduction of the participatory budget, more than 3,000 projects with a value of 220 million euros have been implemented, mainly in the poorer regions. In 2010, more than 100,000 people participated in this process. Nearly 3% of them were even actively involved as delegates. People in Recife are convinced by the participatory budget, for it creates transparency in politics and ensures that the money is sent where it is needed.
Nossa, e tinha bastante participação, né? Olha só.
Sim, muito.
Uhum.
É.
E desde o princípio foi assim,
Sempre.
com bastante participação?
Sempre.
In 1989, the Brazilian Workers' Party revolutionized the concept of government when they installed the widely successful system of participatory budgeting in Porto Alegre, Brazil. City residents could now participate directly in the allocation of city funds.
No primeiro ano a gente não tinha a estrutura que teve depois, né?
Sim.
Porque ele foi montando, porque o processo também foi, né, ficando mais qualificado na estrutura do governo, porque antes a gente ia por conta própria, estava a história debaixo do braço, tal, né? Depois, claro, teve um ônibus, tinha toda a estrutura que se criou por necessidade, né? A partir do segundo governo.
Os anos não são 500 mil, sei lá, quem te pariu, Brasil. Os anos não são 500 nem mil. Quem te descobriu, desprotegeu, te consumiu. Quem assinou a tua escravatura, que escravaturou. Quem te vendeu sem escritura, te superfaturou. Quem te desfigurou, sei lá, quem te pariu, Brasil. Os anos não são 500 nem mil, sei lá.
Faz 11 anos que eu moro aqui, no Timbaú, 11 anos completo. Muitas coisas conquistamos, que quando eu vim para cá, quase não tinha nada. Isso aqui era mato puro. Nós temos aqui, dentro do Sesmar, né, nós temos o primeiro galpão de reciclagem de computadores, que também é uma coisa que veio oriunda do orçamento participativo. Nós temos o PSF também, que foram obras também que vieram na outra gestão.
O programa Saúde da Família. Todos os profissionais atendem a família. Não tem um ginecologista, só atende. Todos nós atendemos desde o bebê até o idoso, né?
Nós temos aqui a creche, né, que é a creche Crescer com Lazer, que é uma creche que está aqui também, veio também ajudada pelo orçamento participativo, juntamente com a governança solidária local. Nós, os delegados ou conselheiros, subimos as nossas necessidades aqui do nosso bairro, que trabalhamos aqui. Agora, quem não mora, que não trabalha, não sabe qual é a necessidade. Não é o conselheiro sozinho. O conselheiro precisa de toda a comunidade. É por isso que a gente pede que a comunidade se una. A cidade de Porto Alegre, ela é construída em cima do orçamento participativo, várias coisas que tem aí. Então, a democracia participativa é isso, quando se faz grandes reuniões, que tu possa expressar o teu sentimento e dizer aquilo que tu sente. Porque é bom quando tu pode botar para fora, como a gente diz no palavreado comum, aquilo que tu sente, encarando a pessoa, olho no olho, dizendo aquilo que tu acha uma verdade.
Hoje eu vim aqui junto com a comunidade, né, onde a gente vai estar discutindo as questões aqui da comunidade, como habitação, saúde, né, lazer, cultura, que é para melhorias da comunidade em todo, criança, adolescente, os adultos, né, uma melhor vida aqui para o pessoal da comunidade.
Agora a gente está batalhando para a luz, né? A luz, os esgotos também, que fizeram os esgotos, mas está tudo entupidos. E agora estão fazendo tudo de novo. Vamos começar tudo de novo.
Aquela comunidade que levou mais gente para a Assembleia vai ter mais chance de colocar suas demandas em primeiro lugar. Esse é o principal critério. Depois vem os outros critérios, assim, do tipo, realmente a necessidade. Se tem uma rua que luta muito tempo por uma pavimentação e não conseguiu, e tem dificuldade de mobilizar, como é lá no Partenon, que tem uma rua que é assim, bom, esse ano então a rua vai entrar, vamos colocar a rua mais bem colocada para que ela, né, entre lá, seja beneficiada, né.
Pela nossa necessidade, pela precariedade de vida que a gente tinha, todas as comunidades se uniram e demandaram em primeira prioridade Vila dos Papeleiros. Porque tu não conheceu essa vila como ela era. Mas no estado degradante que a gente vivia misturado com rato, barata, tudo quanto era tipo de... assim, de coisas que eram malocas, né? Olha a casa dela. Se tu olhar a casa dela ali, tu vai ver que ela tá num palacete, tá? Por exemplo, aqui, olha aqui o corredor, ó, cheio de lixo, cheio de sacaria, tá? Aqui era a minha reciclagem. A minha casa, minha reciclagem. A nossa vila é uma vila ecológica. Porque quem não puxa carrinho estria o papel. Mas 95% é catador e reciclador. Aqui é uma plenária do orçamento participativo, ó. Mais pra frente. Olha aqui, ó. Olha esse beco aqui. Isso aqui aqui corria água aqui, ó. E quando chovia... Esgoto a céu aberto. Esgoto a céu aberto. Quer dizer que essa é a nossa qualidade de vida que nós tínhamos.
24 anos tem a comunidade.
E o orçamento participativo é somente nos últimos pouco tempo, não? Faz 2 anos.
Eu estou de presidente da comunidade, vai fazer um ano. Aí eu participo do orçamento só 1 ano. Quem participava mais era outra presidente.
Mas os avanços nesse ano, como tem sido? Tem sido bastante...
Sim, tudo que a gente conseguiu até agora aqui dentro foi neste ano. Nos outros anos nada aconteceu.
A gente não tinha muito recurso aqui dentro. Depois que o Tilão assumiu o cargo de presidente, olha, mudou muita coisa. Até banheiro, tudo. Agora a gente toma banho lá como se estivesse na casa da gente, né?
E esse último ano, tem essa coisa do banheiro? Não tinha o banheiro?
Não tinha banheiro, não tinha nada. A gente tinha que fazendo a sacolinha lá no chão lá. Agora a gente tem banheiro, temos esgoto, temos tudo aqui dentro. Temos um médico, temos tudo. Mas tem que dar entrevista, né? Tem que falar o que é realidade, né? Mas que horror, tu matou o rato.
Tá, Paulinho.
O que a gente observa, um padrão que se observa, é que nas regiões mais pobres receberam uma maior quantidade de obras por habitante e um maior volume de investimentos, né, em recursos financeiros por habitante. Então, assim, a gente vê claramente as regiões mais pobres foram aquelas que receberam uma maior quantidade de obras e serviços. À medida que a região enriquece, digamos, aumenta o salário mínimo, cai os investimentos na região.
Qual meu nome? Quem sou eu? Um dos escravos do infiel, o comprovante da existência de Deus. Qual meu nome? Quem sou eu? Um dos escravos do infiel, o comprovante.
Não adianta ter asfalto se não tiver cultura. Cultura é muito importante, cultura, educação e tal, que estão tudo linkado. Habitação, tudo está linkado uma na outra. Onde uma dessas peças não funcionar, não funciona nada. Então não adianta a gente querer só casa, se não tiver cultura, né? O povo precisa de cultura, né? Pô, o nosso povo precisa disso. E dessa forma, porque o rap é bem assim, ó. A nossa, como eu já falei, a nossa arma é o microfone e a nossa munição é a rima, as palavras que tu fala.
Será que age como um policial que não protege só faz o mal? Não valoriza um detetivo, mata no engano, inventa um motivo. Que droga, quem sou eu?
Quando a gente planta uma flor ou uma árvore frutífera, a gente tem que plantar e esperar um ano depois para depois colher, né? Colher frutos, né? Aí, pô, orçamento participativo é a mesma coisa, Tu tem que plantar um ano para o outro ano tu colher. Aí quando eu ganhei uma demanda que gostaria de fazer um evento tal que também que tivesse frutos que pudesse ajudar a sociedade. Então a gente fez assim, uma outra Zona Sul, que foi o nosso primeiro filme, né? Que foi um DVD filme onde tem várias informações. Com o pensamento, pô, a gente vai fazer esse DVD, onde a gente também vai ter aquele lance de um mundo de igualdade, independente de classe social e tal. Vamos começar também a trocar informações, as nossas ideias, como a escola da vida, né? A nossa bandeira, como eu brinco com os políticos lá, é PDP, Partido da Periferia pelas Causas dos Excluídos da Juventude, que está aí, ó, essa família reunida aí. Isso é tudo povo, todo mundo faz trabalho social, sim, independente de estar lá no orçamento participativo ou não está. Cada um faz a sua parte. Se os políticos fizessem tudo isso que a gente faz aqui, mesmo não tendo lá dentro, o mundo seria melhor.
Cada conquista que tu fizer, tem que cada vez querer mais. Eu acho que o orçamento participativo foi o primeiro degrau. Agora a gente tem que carregar o segundo, o terceiro, o quarto, até a gente chegar na nossa democracia perfeita. Eu acho que isso, começando por Porto Alegre, tinha que seguir pelo Brasil, para que todo o Brasil inteiro pensasse do mesmo jeito, para que assim a gente chegasse no governante maior do Brasil, e assim talvez chegasse nos governantes do mundo, e assim transformando o mundo perfeito.
Eu acho que São Leopoldo deu um pulo, assim, né, com o orçamento participativo. Porque, assim, como é que vão saber que aqui precisa de alguma coisa se a gente não for lá dizer, né? Daí, que nem as creches, faltava muita creche, ainda falta em São Leopoldo, mas daí a gente já conseguiu, que nem calçamento. Aonde mora um vereador, alguém, sempre era feito as coisas. Agora, onde não tem ninguém importante, não era feito. Assim, não, com orçamento participativo, todo mundo tem direito, né? Isso é muito bom, eu achei ótimo. Uhum. Daí a gente correu bastante, né? E agora uma nova demanda, né, que é essa para as crianças, né? Uhum. E vamos ver se a gente consegue, né? Os deficientes merecem também, né? Uhum. Né, filho?
Né? Tu acompanhava a mamãe lá no orçamento participativo? Tu ia? É? Ia. O que tu ia fazer?
A gente veio para votar nas demandas, né? Que a gente está precisando, né? Aqui na grande feitoria.
Na primeira gestão eu participei, né? Muito bem, as nossas demandas que nós colocamos, todas elas foram votadas e passou na votação, né? Então eu acho que isso aí é um voto de confiança.
Valeu! Um abraço no coração de todos.
Então hoje, né, tu tem uma participação popular em todas as estruturas democráticas da cidade, que existem na cidade, nas entidades, não só no orçamento participativo. Aprenderam aonde? Na ida no orçamento participativo. Aí descobriram que lá no orçamento participativo ele podia fazer o mesmo debate no time de futebol, fazer o mesmo debate na igreja, fazer o mesmo debate na associação, e ele acabou indo dando essa ideia. né, participando, contribuindo no seu bairro, na sua cidade, a partir das instâncias que ele participa normalmente, de forma permanente.
E isto aqui é um contrato social, né? É o governo Arivanazzi, o governo do nosso município, dando autoridade ao povo de São Leopoldo decidir organizadamente, não no grito, no debate, organizadamente, decidir aonde preferencialmente devem ser investidos os recursos públicos.
Em São Leopoldo parecia muito vivo assim, essa coisa de construir a proposta mesmo. Então, de discutir as propostas para a região, e porque tinham que votar as propostas naquela noite mesmo, ou naquela tarde. Então, ali era muito, a construção era muito viva.
5, 12, 4, 17, 18, 12.
Acho que esse é o verdadeiro sentido do orçamento participativo. É fazer valer a opinião, as prioridades da comunidade. E o Parque Imperatriz foi uma prioridade que foi levantada e, enfim, o orçamento viabilizou isso. A gente sabe que essas pessoas que viveram aqui, nessa área, que moravam, que tinham a sua atividade de subsistência aqui, né? Essas pessoas, elas não foram simplesmente removidas, retiradas daqui. Elas foram levadas para um loteamento, mas onde foi dada uma condição de saneamento básico, né? Saúde, segurança e principalmente geração de renda, através da coleta seletiva implantada também em São Leopoldo a partir de 2005.
Eu morava nas Camélias, só que aquela área que eu morava era horrível. Era só na parte que tinha rato. Era uma tristeza, minhas crianças viviam cheias de ferida. E aí, quando teve a enchente, foi pior ainda, porque a gente perdeu praticamente tudo, né?
E a senhora, então, acha que é muito bom esse processo?
Mas, olha, foi meu melhor presente de Natal. Tô com 41 anos, foi meu melhor presente de Natal, foi ter um canto. Um canto digno para os meus filhos. Porque aquela área era muito triste. Muito triste mesmo. Tem pessoas que vêm para cá e não reconhecem, né? Mas eu tô feliz aqui.
As pessoas estavam ali muito abertas, né, para uma renovação de lideranças, para um processo novo, que é um pouco uma coisa que hoje aqui em Porto Alegre a gente se ressente um pouco, né? No novo conselho agora para 2007, 2008 em Porto Alegre, a renovação foi só de 1/3, né?
Essas palavras, que muitas das vezes, senhor prefeito, as demandas que nós viemos buscar no CAR, o coordenador dos CAR nos diz o seguinte: olha, poderia até ajudar vocês, mas a prefeitura não tem. Então também não podemos estar batendo muito no CAR, porque a realidade que o CAR nos passa é que não está acontecendo nada, está ficando difícil para ele trabalhar. Então nós também queremos saber dessa história. Ele tem que se esmerar do que ele pode. Agora, qual é o problema que tem aí? A prefeitura tem ou não tem? Qual é a realidade do CAR? O CAR está aqui para intermediar e responder as nossas demandas ou só para empurrar com a barriga para fazer de conta? Isso nós não queremos. Um abraço a todos, muito obrigada.
O orçamento participativo não está morrendo. Ele, ao contrário, está mais vivo que nunca, porque ele depende não do prefeito, não dos secretários, ele depende disso que vocês estão fazendo aqui hoje.
E o Fogaça, eu já considero ele um governo de elite. É um governo assim, ó, que ele nunca diz não. Mas muitas vezes ele não diz não, mas também não faz. Né? Quer dizer, esse é o jeito que ele lida conosco.
No momento que o governo não executa um nível de execução maior, que é apenas 17%, e algumas obras atrasadas que também eles realizaram. E no momento que o governo não leva todas as suas propostas ao processo do AP para decidir, e começa a decidir por conta própria, essa vontade política ela é fracionada, ela é menor, não é igual que aquela anterior. Então o processo do AP não é virtuoso nesse momento. Ele é muito mais um processo de resistência da parte da população.
E a prova está que muitas coisas estão sendo construídas e a placa do AP, que nós estamos tendo a iniciativa nossa, não, ali essa placa foi paga por nós, para a gente poder colocar na frente das obras que estão sendo construídas, porque foi nós que demandamos, foi nós que priorizamos, foi nós que conquistamos. Então, eles, secretários querendo tirar essa marca do AP com interesse pessoal, o clientelista, como diz o Chiquinho.
Mas hoje na cidade tem muita coisa acontecendo que não está passando pelo AP. Inclusive o pessoal do AP fica sabendo pelos meios de comunicação muitas vezes. Antigamente tudo passava, o AP ele era ouvido.
É que existia uma cogestão, hoje não, hoje eu estou no poder, eu mando, eu faço o que eu quero, o que eu acho e tu reclama para quem tu quiser. Então mudou muito. Eles não vão nas reuniões mais, não participam da discussão nem dos debates.
Participatory budgeting is being picked up by a lot of international organizations, the World Bank, the UNDP, and being promoted across, not only across Latin America, but across the globe. And you can actually find experiments in participatory budgeting all the way from Albania to Zambia. I mean, it's all over Eastern Europe, it's all over Africa now, and it's in dozens of countries, basically every single country in Latin America. So it's spreading, but the question is what kind of participatory budgeting is spreading? Is it the sort of original kind that's associated with Porto Alegre, where you had open assemblies, you had deliberative meetings where the decisions were respected by the government and carried out? Or do you have this new kind of participatory budgeting where instead of open assemblies you get often participants being named by the mayor, or sort of we want representatives from this group and this group at the meetings, and they sort of open it up to those participants that they're most familiar with and most friendly with.
So I think those are suggestions for a citizen's agenda to promote participatory democracy and to use it in the work at the grassroots level, in the neighborhood organizations and so on. In certain places, certain small municipalities like Guelph in Ontario, or like in a boroughs in Montreal called Le Plateau Mont-Royal, we succeeded to experiment participatory budget. That's the second year. It's a very young, new experience, not really consolidated, but we hope that it will continue, and moreover, we hope that we'll be able to build upon this experience to experiment it in other boroughs of Montreal.
Right now, there are relatively few people in the U.S. who know about participatory budgeting, let alone are trying to make it happen here. But those of us who have been working on this are aware that participatory budgeting and other types of programs like this are becoming more popular in Europe, all around the world, in Canada, basically everywhere except the U.S. So we asked ourselves, why couldn't this happen in the U.S.? And of course, one requirement for it to happen here is people have to know about it. And compared with Latin America, we have a lot farther to go. There's less knowledge, less information about participatory democracy here, less of a history of grassroots participation than in many Latin American countries. That said, in many Latin American countries, there was not much of a history of grassroots participation. There were severe dictatorships. People were used to not participating, and they've changed. So if in a place like Venezuela, which used to be run by a dictatorship, where people were not participating very much 10 years ago, if now they can be participating massively, we have to ask ourselves, could we affect that kind of radical change here in the U.S.? And I think we can.
If you could actually combine that innate intelligence, millions of different diverse opinions from people who have different perspectives, you would end up with fantastic policies.
They go from incompetence to complacency, and there are questions about his integrity. Aren't people rightly asking now, is this man simply not cut out for the job?
Prime Minister,
our party that brought in legislation in 2000 to restrict foreign donors.
Right now, the whole model of policy development and arguably of democracy is a broadcast model. It goes like this. I'm a politician. Listen to my advertisements and debates, then go and vote for me, and then I'm going to broadcast to you for 4 years, and then we get to do it all over again. You vote, I rule.
Government in Britain is based on the party system. And although the elector marks his cross against the name of an individual, he is in fact casting a vote in support of a party program.
This model is inappropriate for the 21st century.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I'm not talking about people lobbying government or outside parties influencing government. I'm talking about, in some ways, unbundling and reconstituting what is a government.
I think there's a great potential for decision-making to start actually on a ground level, on a far less grand stage than Parliament deciding about immigration laws, but actually about really participatory budgeting.
I represent a model railway club, and we're looking for some funding to purchase track. And this event, they've got £20,000 up for grabs, and the community to decide where the money goes.
Well, today I'm going to try and get some funding for playground equipment for the children at the school.
I have nominated a project which is to regenerate a churchyard at Morecambe Parish Church. The whole idea is that the people of Poulton, and only the people of Poulton, will vote on each project, and the £20,000 will be given away this afternoon.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to start proceedings in 5 minutes.
Each group is going to have a 3-minute presentation, and we are going to have to keep it very strictly to 3 minutes.
Let's start off then. We have David from Morecambe Parish Church.
We know that people's perception that they can participate in decision-making is a key driver. It has a direct correlation with levels of trust and satisfaction.
I therefore commend this project to you and ask for your vote this afternoon.
Now, we know that both trust and satisfaction are taking a bit of a dive in the public sector at the moment, so actually there does seem to be a correlation between the sense that people can influence decisions and trust and satisfaction. It doesn't necessarily mean that they do, but it's that sense that they can.
I'd like to hand you over now to Ebony, who'd like to speak.
Hi, my name is Ebony. We would like you to give us a grant for £2,000.
So in order for us to continue, please support our bid. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dean Harrison. And there's Jack Law.
When you do it in public, and when other people know it's your reputation on the line, right? I can give my mate 10 out of 10 for his little project, but in fact, this business about making the hospital work better in the town I live in,
Evacuation.
like I've actually got to pay some attention to that.
To support our older residents.
Once you deliver something that actually allows people to make a decision, it's incredible how compelling it is, how willing people are to participate in these things, because they are exciting.
Thank you very much for this.
Thanks very much.
That's why people are less engaged in politics in the representative sense, but they're much more engaged in politics in a personal sense, in terms of the power that they feel to affect their community, the world around them. I think that's steadily increasing as their trust in representative politicians is steadily decreasing.
We got the money. Oh, it was absolutely superb. We had a really good day. We were really, really chuffed by it all, and everybody that's been involved is absolutely delighted with it.
Right, guys. Yesterday, Jack and I went. As you know, we went to the In Your Hands. It was unsuccessful. We didn't get enough votes.
I mean, although we weren't successful at that time. I mean, it opened my eyes up to how many other different organisations, were in the area.
But at least the people are making a decision.
Yeah, for the community, it was a good idea.
I don't think the money was spent on anything that didn't deserve it, so...
Is this the first one?
This is the first one, yeah.
Yeah. Right, it's the first time I'd heard of it. I'd never heard of it before. Right.
So we know better next time. If there's another event like that, we know better.
It was a learning curve.
You don't have to get your way to feel enfranchised. What actually comes of giving people responsibility for decision-making is they really care about the decisions of the minorities within a group, and that people are very willing to compromise, and that compromise is easily achievable once everybody's cards are on the table and people can really understand the viewpoints at work.
Democracy is a lot more than majority rule on a nightly basis. The technology is becoming possible for millions of people to have a conversation.
The assumption that people will be included is spreading so widely and so deeply. That, I think, is going to be a big driver of governmental change. It's not just when it becomes an option for the people in elected office, but also an expectation of their constituents.
It's just that now we have, a mass consumer technology that supports this, and so we're only now beginning to discover what we can do with it.
In a country where clearly voter turnout levels are pretty low, lots of people believe that politicians don't work for them, where lots of people feel that nothing they can do matters or in any way has any impact at all. It would give citizens a lot more power if they knew a lot of stuff that was currently hidden or effectively secret. But I also think it would enable politicians to run much better government. And this is a thing that I think politicians don't often believe. They tend to think transparency is just something used to harm them. And opacity may hide problems today, but it almost certainly builds the biggest scandals of the sort that then cause politicians real massive trouble. So if I could make them understand anything about this new world, it would be that much greater transparency probably makes them much more electable people.
It is a shift in power. It's a different kind of democracy, in my view. It is seeing representative democracy as playing an important role, and it's also not romanticising the fact that everyone wants to sit on committees.
And of course, for government and politicians, that is a profound challenge to the way politics is normally done, which is, we communicate from on high, from Parliament, from Whitehall, and only once every 4 years or 5 years is there a general election where the public are brought in. Now, I think that's a good thing that this change is happening, but I think it will shake up British politics and indeed politics around the world in a way that people probably haven't anticipated yet.
If you look at what George Osborne is saying and some of the other people in the new wing of the Conservative Party, they appear to understand what's going on in the real world in terms of social networks and MySpace generations and all that kind of stuff. But I think that's partly because they have the advantage of being in opposition for a period of time. Whether they can apply that to government is another question.
Remember, we do have this thing called, which is sort of voting, you know what I mean, where people get to choose who their representatives are. Do you know what I mean? I mean, politics is quite open to...
Once every 4 years.
Exactly.
Is that enough?
No, it isn't. Definitely not. I mean, I think let me think about how I would put this.
New paradigms cause dislocation and confusion, and they're nearly always received with coolness, or worse, mockery, hostility, and vested interest fight against change.
It's very important that the role for government remains, the role for government being to provide the resources for people to make local decisions about how they want money spent in an area. This isn't about sort of a DIY country, because if you had a DIY country without any role for government, then where would the funding come from for all the important things that people want done in a particular area, for example?
I think representative democracy was based on the idea that people are thick. That's not true. I think there's a much more radical thing that will happen, which is basically that people go around the side of representative democracy, and rather than saying, I want to kind of have input on what this politician is deciding in Parliament, they'll do it themselves.
I think what we'll see is just some of the activities and powers of government moving into the public realm, and they will be run better by citizens than they are by government.
Imagine you wanted to build a new railway between London and Birmingham that cut the journey time. How much would that cost? At the moment, the only method of doing that is through taxes. Now, if you were to use the point to do that, completely outside of public policy, you could do it. Yeah, you could do it. There is this possibility of using these tools to do massive things, which is completely unexplored at the moment.
Broader numbers of people can be engaged in something like policy formation. For example, the Green Party in Canada created its program through a wiki, where all members of the Green Party could come together, just like with Wikipedia, and co-innovate and co-create a political program. And it worked out pretty well.
And actually what these tools are doing are allowing people to make decisions themselves and to work collaboratively in a way that means that representative democracy is less meaningful to them.
There's a whole new model that's emerging where we become part of the government. I call it Government 2.0.
What I think will happen is going to be a much higher degree of hybridization between government and the people, and particularly the groups of people that they serve.
There's a good analogy for the new model of government in terms of the changes in the internet itself. MySpace beats MTV, CNN.com gets eclipsed by Blogger.com. Similarly, with governments, rather than doing everything, could more create a platform whereby citizens and others can self-organize to create better value than what currently exists.
We've seen lots of other changes in the past that, could potentially lead to a better world, but actually result in, First World War trench warfare or, genocide in the Second World War, for example. So I think, we should be careful about having too utopian a vision, for how these things will play out.
Of course, there are lots of challenges in doing something like this. There'll be saboteurs. There'll be some people who won't have access to the web. There's the whole complexity of millions of ideas and how these get aggregated together and the good ones come to the fore. But these are all in the category of implementation challenges. They're not in the category of reasons not to do it.
In any revolution, there are downsides. But I'm optimistic that we're living through what economists would call a positive supply-side shock to the amount of freedom in the world. More people can say more things to more people than ever in history, and that is still growing enormously. And I think in the times when we've seen enormous increases in intellectual or political freedom, there has certainly been a period of chaos immediately afterwards, but that over the long haul, the values of those changes have been not just mainly positive, but enormously positive for society.
We will have a form of government that engages and understands and knows what to do with what people are saying.
It's a politics where you can help as well as just say what you want, and that's an amazing thing. And at the moment we're starting to see that with some online projects. But imagine if a country was run like that, or imagine if even just a town was run like that. In the way that we're starting to see football clubs run like that, I think that's a sign of things to come.
As as time goes on, we will see people increasingly comfortable participating in situations where the social value is really about other people caring enough rather than someone being paid to provide that value. And where the end point of that is, I don't know. But I do think the end result is going to be quite profound.
Los seres humanos y las seres humanas, nosotros y nosotras, convivimos en la Tierra. Los seres humanos y las seres humanas nos juntamos. Nos juntamos en parejas, nos juntamos en grupos. Los seres humanos y las seres humanas vivimos en comunidad. Vivimos en aldeas, en poblados, en pueblos, en ciudades. Entonces, los seres humanos y las seres humanas, al vivir juntos, tenemos algunos problemas. Para ello, los seres humanos y las seres humanas han inventado muchas formas de organizarse. La democracia es una de ellas. En una democracia no manda ni el más fuerte, ni el más listo, ni el más guapo, ni el más alto. En una democracia mandamos todos, los seres humanos y las seres humanas. Los perros no, por favor. En nuestra democracia, todos menos los perros, elegimos a unos cuantos de nosotros, que tampoco son ni los más guapos, ni los más altos, ni los más fuertes, ni los más listos. Solo son los más votados. Cada año todos y todas ponemos un dinero en común, y esos cuantos se encargan de gastarlo en lo que creen que nos hace más falta. Esos son los presupuestos de cada barrio, de cada ciudad, de cada región, de cada comunidad. Según esto, Manolo es un ser humano habitante de la Tierra, que convive con otros seres humanos y humanas en una ciudad, y no le gusta tener problemas. Manolo elige a sus representantes. Manolo aporta su dinero cada año, y los representantes gastan el dinero. Pero Manolo tuvo un problema. Un día cayó en la cuenta de que no sabían qué gastaban su dinero. Esa pregunta se la habían planteado antes muchos Manolos en todo el mundo. Ante esto, muchos seres humanos y humanas imaginaron una manera distinta de repartir el dinero.
To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. Dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people.
It's always been that the decisions made by the few, with the money and the power, dictated the priorities of their government and the stories in the media. They determine the lives and the opportunities of their citizens.
And friends, I say this, not just because it is the right thing to do, but because history shows us
democracy is coming to the youth.
Freedom, democracy, and justice. By working together as a light in a world emerging from a deep darkness.
In the 17th chapter of St. Luke it is written, the kingdom of God is within man, not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you. You, the people, have the power. Now let us fight to fulfill that promise. Let us fight to free the world.
You must speak. I can't. You must. It's our only hope.
След близо 20 години занимания и подготовка психологически да подпомагам хората, стигнах до идеята, че нещото, което липсва и на което си струва човек да се посвети, не е само единствено и толкова фокусирано върху, да я кажем, душата. Това е снимка от блок 45 в младост. Разбрах, че Магдалена е свързана с това место. Аз я взех от Google Earth и я предложих на моите студенти, които учат клинична социална работа, като своеобразно знаме на техния Фейсбук форум. Защо го предложих? Аз живея малко по-далече от това място и от 16-ти етаж, от който живея, се вижда едно море от подобни неща. Аз мятам, че това нещо е предизвикателството пред живеенето днес моето. Много сериозно предизвикателство, за което не се обръща внимание. Какво имам предвид? Имам предвид, че за мен това е картината на културата на социално самоизключване, която сме приели за даденост. Имам предвид, че онова, което според мен е големия проблем на тази картина, е, че тя имплицира, предполага, заповядва определен тип мислене, което смятам, че е погрешно. И мисля, че става въпрос за неучастието ни като граждани в властта, от която зависи всичко, което се случва там, където живеем. Идеята за беднотата на нашето комунално живеене, за трагичната липса на локална демокрация и тежкото пренебрегване на нашите граждански възможности е време да почне да се адресира и да го вземем в ръце, защото виждаме, че няма как, не се взима и не се обръща внимание. Аз мятам, че имаме нужда от дебати и от действия, разбира се, и се надявам форуми като Горичка да бъдат прощапулник на подобен тип поведение, за да преодолеем системно насажданото взаимно недоверие, отчуждаване и взаимно обезвластяване. Това може да звучи не много убедително за хора като нас тук, които почти сигурно е, че сме висшисти, почти сигурно е, че владеем поне един чужд език, почти сигурно е, че се оправяме с живота относително добре. Проблемът е какво от това и проблемът е дали от това имаме апетит за локална демокрация. Ако имаме апетит, каква полза от това? Аз мятам, че ползата е на много нива и че липсата на този аспект на нашето живеене, именно локалната демокрация и желанието ни да управляваме нещата, които ни се случват, участието в делата, от които зависи живота ни, е нещо, което ще облагороди и нас, и децата ни, и тази картина, която видяхме от Младост 1. Сред общността на, как да опиша, хората, които смятам, че сме в тази зала, интелектуалци, лидери, ние не щем да имаме нищо, предприемачи. Аз смятам, че сме в позицията на спонтанно развили се хора, които имат капацитета да бъдат авторитети там, където са. Аз смятам, че сме в позиция на авторитети. Думата ни се чува. Там, където живеем. Уважават ни. Ето примери за участие, което живота, който живеем в България, е пренебрегнал и го пропускаме. А това е, според мен, много сериозен начин да подобрим живота, който живеем. Участието на гражданите в местното образование е под санитарния минимум. До голяма степен начина, по който се мисли и провежда образованието, изключва и обезсмисля това участие. Настоятелствата са формални, естествено, защото училищата нямат никакъв избор върху онова, което преподават и как се преподава. И новия закон прави същата работа. Много интересно стоят нещата и с по-властови позиции, като районен съд и районна прокуратура. Ще бъде ли по-добре за нас да участваме, да избираме местния прокурор? Ще бъде ли по-добре да избираме местния съдия? Какво трябва да направим, ако се убедим, че от това качеството на сигурността ще бъде по-добро? Ще бъде ли по-добре и коя е единицата, която да разполага с парите и с властта, да разпределя как да минават пътищата, откъде да минават пътищата, какво да се строи и какво да не се строи? Срещу 55-ти блок, аз живея в 56-ти, два високи 16-етажни блока, една изключително влиятелна софийска строителна фирма построи нещо като мол, който може би няма да стане мол, но той е на 5 метра от прозорците на този блок. първите 5 етажа са заобиколени и от изток, и от юг, от един буквално мол, който е на буквално 7 метра от тях. Думба-лумба, построиха го. Може да говорим романи да изпишеме защо това е станало, но според мен не можеше да не стане, защото нямаше и продължават да няма такъв тип управа, такъв тип управия, governance ще го кажат онези, които говорят по-така, който да дава истинска власт на хората, които живеят, да определят нещата, които се случват. Това, което искам да кажа е, че е време да развием апетит за такова участие и системно да се събираме. Значи не само пролетариите трябва да се обединяват, и демократите трябва да се обединяват, това откриха. Системно да търсим един друг контакт, за да подкрепяме властта, да произведем такива промени в живота, който водим, така, щото действително да влияем върху нещата, не само върху зелените, но и върху черните площи и върху всичко, което касае инфраструктурата в кварталите ни. По същия начин, според мен, би трябвало да стоят, но не стоят. Въпросът е свързан с другите аспекти на нашия съвместен живот. Социалните грижи са тежко лишени от всякаква възможност гражданите да участват в грижите за онези, които имат нужда. Нито управлението на социалните грижи, нито тяхното бюджетиране е подчинено по някакъв начин на нещо, което прилича на местно самоуправление. Да не говорим за здравеопазването. Абсолютно безпомощни сме. Въпрос на късмет е дали GP-то ще бъде добро или няма да бъде добро. Абсолютно безпомощни сме пред болниците, ако те се случат кисели или се случат така, а не така. Има ли апетит болниците да се управляват от граждански настоятелства? Има мълчание по този въпрос и аз искам то да бъде нарушено. Местните изкуства, спорт и развлечения, нещо, което съставлява огромна част от местния живот, не принадлежи на местната общност. Има ентусиасти, но по никакъв начин местния бюджет не се разглежда като нещо, което местните хора управляват, за да развиват както аматьорския си спорт, така и всички възможни клубни дейности или каквото и да още да решим, което съставлява живата тъкан на живота извън семейството. Мария каза какво се случва в семейството и другите колеги, но като излезем извън семейството, какво правим? Притичваме като зайци до спирката, за да отидем на работата. Пространството между вкъщи и света навън е страшно. И аз казвам, че то, за да не бъде страшно, трябва да започнем да го управляваме. Всъщност основният въпрос е, има ли апетит за такова участие? Бързият отговор е, много е малък. По-задълбочения, не знам кой може да го даде. Сигурно имам на много места хора, които са ентусиасти, но те не са във връзка един с друг. Факт е, че няма представителство идеята за местната демокрация. Няма представителство. Всички сме научени да се домогваме до централната държава, да я яхнем, за да правим същото, което тя прави. Това нещо трябва да му се сложи край, когато централната власт се балансира с местна власт, и аз мятам, че апетита към местна власт може да се породи у хора, които могат да си представят, че могат да бъдат общински съветници на много малки общински съвети. Представете си най-малкият общински съвет, колко трябва да бъде, за да може да бъдем в него общински съветници. Сигурно това е блок 45 и един достатъчно голям, или 56-ти, са достатъчно, според мен, добри места, в които можем да си представим, че сме общински съветници, или хайде едно каре. Няма нужда да е нещо толкова бомбастично, като Общинския съвет на София. Той е вреден. Той по своята същност става авторитарен и тоталитарен. Толкова голямо нещо не може да се управлява демократично, ако не се раздели на по-малки общности, за да могат те да има смисъл да сме граждани там. Иначе си ставаме граждани само по ЕГН. Един практически въпрос, който го поставям пред всички нас, за да илюстрирам мисленето си. Ако се опитаме да мислим по този начин, можем да си представим, че такива форуми, като този, който намирам за много благородно начинание, могат да се случват и локално. Някой ще каже, ама централен форум ли е Горичка? Ами не знам дали е централен, но най-малкото национален. Хайде Софийски. Или хайде от центъра на София. Добре. Въпросът е какво да направим, за да имаме Горичка в младост. Кой ще дойде там? Къде ще бъде? В коя зала? Какво трябва да направя, за да се случи? Как да го организирам? Подобни инициативи ще създадат апетита за демокрация, локална, каквато друга според мен не съществува, и ще бъдат училището за участие, от което ще имат нужда и ние, и нашите деца. Лошата новина е, която искам да бъда вестител, че дефицитът на гражданско участие и на апетит към локална демокрация, от моя гледна точка, е неистов. Аз предлагам да мислим и да се събираме за това как да го преодолеем и как да създаваме обществен натиск за промяна на всички нива, щото това нещо да се промени. Благодаря за вниманието.